Hello, today we will be graphing quadratics in intercept form. Remember, quadratics have a highest exponent of a 2 and their graphs always are U-shaped. Remember that technical term for a U-shaped is a parabola. When graphing in intercept form, it is broken up. Okay, if you look, it is broken up here into two sets of parentheses. So that means it is in factored form. What we are going to do is we are going to find the x-intercepts. The x-intercepts are actually these numbers inside the parentheses, this p and q. What we do is we set these equal to 0. Pretty much what it is, it's the opposites. So once we find the x-intercepts, we can plot those points on the x-axis since they are our x-intercepts. Then we take those and we find the vertex. Here's a little formula, p plus q over 2. I don't really remember that formula. I just know that to find the x of our vertex, we have to take our x-intercepts, add them together, and divide by 2. To find the y-intercept, you take x and you plug it in. And you plug it into the original equation. Okay? So let's look at our first example. We need to graph this equation, this quadratic equation. It is in factored form. There are two sets of parentheses. Well, first, we're going to answer some of these questions. Just like in standard form, look at the number out in front. Out in front of the parentheses, that will tell us if it opens up or down, if it's a maximum or minimum, if it's wider, narrow, or neither. So here, I have out in front of the parentheses, there's nothing there, so that means it's positive, so it opens up. Since something opens up, here's an example. This would be our lowest point, so it is a minimum. There is no number in front of our parentheses, so it means it is neither. It's not wide, it's narrow. It's same as the parent function of y equals x squared. Our x-intercepts are the numbers inside the parentheses. And remember, we think the opposites. What we're doing is we're setting this equal to 0, so x plus 1 equals 0. Subtract 1, we have x equals negative 1. So one of our x-intercepts is negative 1. Here, if I set that equal to 0, x minus 3 equal to 0, add 3, I get 3. It's the opposites. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to plot my x-intercept. So I'm going to go to negative 1 on the x-axis, plot a point, and 3 on the x-axis, and plot a point. So I plotted the x-intercepts. Now to find my vertex, to find the x of my vertex, I'm going to take my x-intercepts, negative 1 plus 3, and divide them by 2. So I'm adding them together and dividing by 2. 3 minus 1 is 2. 2 over 2 is 1. So the x of my vertex is 1. It is also my line of symmetry, or axis of symmetry. To find the y of my vertex, I'm going to take 1 and plug it back into my original equation. So 1 plus 1, and then inside the other parenthesis, 1 minus 3. I'm going to do order of operations, so inside the parentheses first, so 1 plus 1 is 2. 1 minus 3 is negative 2. 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. So now I'm going to plot my vertex at 1, negative 4. So 1, negative 4. That's my vertex. If you want, we can draw that dashed line for our axis of symmetry. Now we can draw our parabola. Double check it. It opens up. Okay, and that is a minimum. Remember, you can pause or stop this at any time to catch up. So I'm going to extend this page so we can see more on it. So I need to graph this equation. Remember, f of x is the same thing as y. So it's y equals. There's nothing in front here, so it's positive, so it opens up. When something opens up, it is a minimum. Okay. There's no number in front, so it's neither. You know, it's the same as the parent function of y equals x squared. So now to find my x-intercepts, remember I set our parentheses equal to 0, so x minus 2 equals 0. Add 2 to both sides, you'll get x equals 2. It's the opposite. This one would be negative 1. So we plot those, 2 and negative 1. Now our vertex has to be somewhere in between those 2 points. Okay, it's going to be somewhere in between here. Remember, to find the x of our vertex, we take our x-intercepts, 2 plus negative 1, and divide them by 2. 2 minus 1 is 1, so I get 1/2. The x of my vertex is 1/2. It's also my line of symmetry. To find the y of my vertex, I'm going to take 1/2 and plug it into my original equation. So I have parentheses 1/2 minus 2. And then parentheses 1/2. I have to go back up and look. Plus 1. So we're just plugging it back into the original equation. 1/2 minus 2 is negative 1.5 or negative 1 1/2. 1/2 plus 1 is 1.5 or 1 1/2. Multiply those. A negative times a positive is a negative. So I get negative 2.25. I'm writing these as decimals because I see those better on a graph. So my vertex is 1/2 negative 2.25 or negative 2 1/4. So 1/2 is in between 0 and 1. Negative 2.25 is somewhere right in here. That is my vertex. I could draw my axis of symmetry. And there's my parabola. All right, let's try this last one. Let's see if I can extend this page more so we can see everything on one. Doesn't look like it. Alright, so this negative out in front of the parentheses right here, this tells us it's going to open down. Since it opens down, it looks something like this. So that means that would be our highest point, so it's a maximum. There is no number in front of there, or that number is 1, so it's neither. Our x-intercepts are the opposites of the numbers inside the parentheses, or if we set them equal to 0 and solve each one of them. So I'd get 1 and negative 2. So I'd plot those, 1 and negative 2. To find the x of my vertex, I'd take my x-intercepts, add them together, and divide by 2. 1 minus 2 is negative 1 over 2. So negative 1/2 is the x of my vertex. It is also my axis of symmetry. Plug that number in to find your y of your vertex. So negative, parentheses, negative 1/2. Minus 1. Then 1/2 plus 2. So negative times negative 1.5, and then 1.5. Two negatives make a positive, so I'm going to get y equals 2.25. So now, negative 1/2 is in between 0 and negative 1. So negative 1/2 and then 2.25 is somewhere right in here. So that's my vertex, my axis of symmetry. Alright, next, simplify and write the quadratic in standard form. Pretty much all we have to do is FOIL or distribute these. So remember, FOIL stands for first, outside, inside, and last. It's pretty much the same thing. I'm going to FOIL, or I'm going to distribute my first term to every term in the second parenthesis. So x times x is x squared. X times negative 5 is negative 5x. Then I'm going to distribute my second term to everything inside the second set of parentheses. 6 times x is plus 6x. 6 times negative 5 is negative 30. So I have y equals, bring down the x squared. 6 minus 1 is 1x minus 30. For the sake of time, I'm going to skip the next one and go to the last slide, because these can be there's a little more work. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to FOIL or distribute my parentheses first. X times x is x squared. X times 5 is 5x. Negative 1 times x is negative 1x. Negative 1 times 5 is negative 5. Bring down the x squared. 5 minus 1 is 4x minus 5. But now I need to bring down that negative 3 that was out in front of my parentheses. You could have distributed this to one of those sets of parentheses first. I like to do it last because I just have to distribute it to these three numbers. So I've got to distribute the negative 3 to the numbers inside of the parentheses. Negative 3x squared. Negative 3 times 4 is negative 12x. And negative 3 times negative 5 is positive 15. So now we have wrote this equation. It was in intercept form or factored form. Now it's in standard form. Okay, and I forgot the x squared there. And we can go and graph this in standard form if we want to. On the last equation, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to distribute or FOIL my parentheses first. X times x is x squared. X times 2 is 2x. 1 times x is 1x. 1 times 2 is 2. So I'm going to bring down the x squared. Combine my like terms of 3x plus 2. And now I have this negative 8 that was outside the parentheses. Okay, I need to bring that down and combine it with its like term. So y equals x squared plus 3x. 2 minus 8 is negative 6. So this is something that we should be able to do. Okay. I have about another minute. I'm going to go back up and finish the other problem here. So I'm going to change this over. So I'm going to distribute. X times x is x squared. X times negative 2 is negative 2x. Negative 4 times x is negative 4x. And negative 4 times negative 2 is positive 8. So bring down the x squared. So I have y equals x squared. Combine our like terms, negative 6x plus 8. There is nothing in front of the parentheses or behind the parentheses that I needed to combine with it. So graphing in intercept form, you plot your x-intercepts, combine your intercepts together, divide them by 2 to find the x of your vertex, and then plug it in to find your y. FOIL and distributing should be a little bit of review for you from past algebra classes. Have a good day.